So people with a narcissistic persona, they're self-involved and their agenda comes first. Their agenda always comes first. And they really aren't interested in how others see it and or how others feel or what it is that others want. And again, this is true both in personal and professional. They can even say it talk as though they do, but when it comes down to it, when you see the choices that get made or what it is that you're being asked to give up in response to, or the more passive aggressive way that they will go about getting their way, you have to know that it is always about their agenda. So one of the last thing I want you to ask yourself is whether or not you deceive yourself. Are there any ways in which you pretend that you can change this person, or you can help this person, or if you just work or just help them to see it or explain it differently, that you're actually going to get to a different outcome, okay? Or that if you model the behavior, remember this one, I'm going to use a marriage example. I try not to sometimes, but when I was married, I just thought if he just sees the way I do things around the house and how I work with the kids and how I try and keep everything sort of organized and how I sort of all of those things, that he would do it and he would follow and he would sort of understand that that's kind of the way things work in a relationship like this or a partnership like this. Got me nowhere. It's like nowhere. It didn't matter how many times I did it. Didn't even matter if I would say, hey, look at what I'm doing. This would be really helpful. No, it just didn't matter. Because again, it's about their agenda, not about ours. And you can really deceive yourself and really even talk about, because it doesn't, the fact that they behave like this doesn't mean that underneath there's things that we really like about them or really love about them or really value about them. It's more about that not looking at them really honestly and not being honest with ourselves about it. And therefore, when we're not, we keep trying or we keep adapting or we keep shifting into our own self-protective patterns because we're not actually able to lead out of the situation. And that is what we want to work on, is how do we shift ourselves and how do we stop enabling it and how do we create a circumstance in which we survive it, right? And not just, there's always going to be limitations. Don't get me wrong. You're never going to create the environment that you would have if you were working with or in a relationship with or friends with, whatever it may be, or the daughter of someone who is not dealing with this persona or doesn't use this persona when they're in survival mode. But at the same time, so what we're talking about here is how do you make sure that you are able to survive it so that it is not undermining your confidence? It is not pushing you into self-protective mode, which has you abandoning yourself and giving up on your potential and, making decisions that really aren't in your own best interest because you're, when we work for or live with for a long time with someone with this persona and we end up in self-protective mode or survival mode all the time ourselves, we're frightened, right? And we can be too frightened to leave them. To leave that job and tell ourselves things like, well, nobody else is ever going to hire me, or I'm never going to get a job where I get paid this much, or, again, these are all of the things that happen to us when we spend an extended period of time in that dynamic and in that sort of fused state with someone with the narcissistic persona, because it doesn't matter what we do, it's never going to be enough, right? It's never going to be good enough. We're never going to be able to sort of influence or have our agenda come first. So these are all important things to understand.